We've talked about this all season. So this isn't a new thought. This is just a thought that has been or continue to grow and in my opinion continue to continue to be proven right. The question was, why would the Falcons seemingly go all in on Kirk Cousins? Out of all the quarterbacks you could have got. Now, no, I'm not. I'm aware that the quarterback selection process wasn't the strongest. But one thing that I do know is out of the quarterbacks that you could got, I know Kirk Cousins was available. Obviously, Russell Wilson was available. Turns out Justin Fields was available. Why were the Falcons so heavy on Kirk Cousins? And why, when they essentially did get Kirk Cousins, why did they feel like they hit the jackpot? Mind you, this is the same Kirk Cousins that's never been to a Super Bowl. Same Kirk Cousins that I think has maybe one playoff win under his belt, maybe two. The same Kirk Cousins that doesn't have the highest ceilings that you would hope that he has, especially with the money that he's accumulated over his career. Why were they so happy for Kirk Cousins? Thursday Night Football proved it. The Falcons beating the Bucs 36-30 in overtime proved it. And I've said this before, but again, I just feel I need, for the people that haven't listened, for the people that haven't watched, let me briefly explain. When we've looked at the Falcons for the past few years now, the Falcons that had Desmond Ridder as their quarterback, the Falcons that had Taylor Heineke as their quarterback, the issue that the Falcons continuously ran into is we have a plethora of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The issue is they did not have a person that can unlock everyone else's talent. You see, the quarterback has a bunch of jobs, has a bunch of responsibilities. And one of them is extracting the best out of younger or their offensive players. Don't get me wrong. Not every quarterback is great. Let's just keep it a bean. Not every quarterback is great. But you would still hope that the quarterback that you enlisted to be your starter, you would hope that they are able to extract the best out of your offensive players. One perfect example, since we're talking about Atlanta, I think Julio Jones would have been great anywhere. I think Julio Jones is a future Hall of Famer. I think Julio Jones, you can argue, is one of the greatest just sheer talents we've seen at the wide receiver position. One of the reasons why I think, outside of the MVP, outside of making it to a Super Bowl, one of the reasons why I think you can say that Matt Ryan had a successful tenure as the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons is because he was able to get the best out of his wide receivers. He was able to get the best out of Julio Jones. He was able to get the best out of Roddy White. Matt Ryan used to throw the ball everywhere. And while no, it did not essentially equal a Super Bowl win, I think a lot of the success that you see Julio Jones having, a lot of praise and accolades that you see Julio Jones has accomplished, a lot of that is because Matt Ryan, a pass-first quarterback, was his quarterback. When you look at this current iteration of the Atlanta Falcons, they've had talent for years, or at least They've projected to have talent. They've had players that you thought should be better than the production that they were exhibiting. For instance, Kyle Pitts, who was a high first-round pick. You had Drake London. You had Bijan Robinson. All of these players you would consider a top tier. The Atlanta Falcons clearly thought that they were important because they were drafted high. But there was a reason why Kyle, especially now, obviously the complaints that you hear is from fantasy owners, but there's a big reason why when we talk about some of the most disappointing players at the end of almost every year, Kyle Pitts' name was on that list. Drake London's name was on that list. Not because they're not talented, but because they did not have a quarterback in Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke that can get the best out of him. So when you get, to bring it full circle, when you get a Kirk Cousins, look, I don't think, even with Raheem Morris, the new coach, I don't think Atlanta believes that they are a Super Bowl caliber team right now. I think they believe they're a good team. They should win the division. But when we pit Atlanta against some of the best teams and some of the best rosters, I don't know if Atlanta themselves even think that they should be up there with, let's say, the Detroit Lions. Let's say the 49ers, even though the 49ers, when fully healthy. Especially when you see their defense still has some major problems. But you know one thing, the one problem that we have not seen this year, outside of maybe one or two games, you can't say that we haven't seen, I'll say it like this. Kirk Cousins has extracted the best out of Drake London. Outside of one or two games, he's extracted the best out of Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Darnell Mooney. Remember, Darnell Mooney was going crazy on Thursday night. If it wasn't, he dropped a pass that if he didn't drop it, I don't think we would have seen the magic that we saw in overtime, because the game probably would have ended in regulation. But Kirk Cousins, one thing that he has proven over his career is that he is an adult and he is a person that, while the ceiling may be lower than you would hope for a veteran of his caliber, he has gotten the best out of people like Stephon Diggs. He's gotten the best out of people like, was it Pierre Carson? Like, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. Oh, Justin Jefferson. Maybe it wasn't Stephon Diggs, but it was definitely Justin Jefferson. And then you look Thursday night. You're going against a Bucs team. While, yes, depleted, their secondary was depleted with injury. However, Kirk Cousins sets an Atlanta Falcons record. Again, remember, I told you, Matt Ryan, who used to throw the ball all over the place, was a quarterback. Michael Vick was a quarterback for this team. And Kirk Cousins became the first Falcons player, and he set the record for most passing yards by a Falcons quarterback with 509. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I believe she asked me why you don't see a lot of, when you look at the college game compared to the NFL game. And I think she asked, why is it that you see, we were talking about Alabama and Georgia, and Jalen Milroe almost collectively, when you talk about passing and rushing, totaled 500 yards. Carson Beck almost had 500 yards. And I was explaining to her that the NFL is much better than college. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's very rare. Even some of the worst defenses in football, it's extremely hard to throw for 400, 500 yards in the NFL because these are professionals. And Kirk Cousins just did it. Kirk Cousins became the first, has the most passing yards from an Atlanta Falcons quarterback. And if you still think that Drake London went out with an injury twice, I believe, in that game and still had 12 receptions for 154 yards. Kyle Pitts, who didn't have a catch a game before, had 8 catches this game. I think it was, obviously, there were opportunities that could have been had for both teams. I think if Darnell Mooney would have caught the pass, it would have been a first down, and then you wouldn't have had to have a long kick that was essentially blocked. Baker Mayfield, he only threw for like 187 yards or something like that. But this was a game that could, obviously, it going into overtime, this was a game that could have been won. It could have been had both sides. I'm not going to crown the Atlanta Falcons the team to beat in the NFC South right now, seeing as though, and I think shouts out to Stephen A. Smith and shout out to L. Duncan. They kind of said it on First Take. Almost every single passing yard that was accumulated by Kirk Cousins, all 509 of those was in the pocket. Meaning the Buccaneers really, obviously, I think a lot of it was due to, the injuries and the people that were out. But a lot of it, they did not have a pass rush to save their life on Thursday. So I don't know, and I doubt that when Atlanta plays a healthier or a better team defensively, Kirk Cousins is going to be able to sit in the pocket long enough to not only throw 58 passes, but to have 509 yards, 4 touchdowns. But I will say that it's not that you win, it's how you win. And getting the game-winning touchdown for Condrell Hodgins, that was thrown by Kirk Cousins, or having Darnell Mooney, who was an afterthought when he was with the Bears. He had an incredible game. Drake London, who they could not get a quarterback to get the best out of Drake London. You got that. This is why. And I'm also not going to just throw away the Bucs. I think the Bucs, if they get healthy, Baker Mayfield, this showed me to score 30 points, and you had a fumble by Bucky Irving, who's a rookie. Baker Mayfield didn't have the best of games as far as he wasn't prolifically throwing the ball all over the place. I'm not going to make grand assumptions or grand conclusions about either team. I think time will tell where both teams sit, and I still think the NFC South is wide open because, again, you have 2 teams that's 3-2, and I think the Saints, they just need to figure out the balance between their defense and offense and get healthy. I think that it is a 3-team race because I'm not even going to disrespect those teams by discussing the Panthers. But I think Kirk Cousins, in a game like this shows, and this is the last thing I'll say on the game. Kirk Cousins has shown at least, and don't get me wrong, it's been an up and down season to start the season for Atlanta. But I think that Kirk Cousins has shown that he is the perfect quarterback for the Falcons. Not saying he is the quarterback to get them over the hump. Not saying that he's the quarterback to get them to a Super Bowl. But there's no question that Drake London, is at least early in the season, has had his best season as a Atlanta Falcon. There's no question that we've seen an emergence outside of last game. We've seen an emergence of Kyle Pitts. Darnell Mooney, at least up to this point, is having the best season he's had in his career. A lot of that is because they have an adult at quarterback, and they have somebody that they know will bring the best out of their players. So shouts out again to the Atlanta Falcons for beating the Buccaneers 36-30 in overtime. Oh, very last thing I'm going to say. Look here, NFL. I understand if you're going to make a rule, make the rule permanent for the entire season. For people that don't know what I'm talking about, the NFL did change the overtime rule. But they changed the overtime rule just for the playoffs. Right now, the overtime rule is, in the regular season, a team, you're the first team. If you win the coin toss and you receive the ball and you score a touchdown, the game is over, which is what we saw on Thursday Night Football. The game is over. The other team does not have a chance. Bada bing, bada boom. If you score a field goal, the team does have a chance to. But if you score a touchdown, then it's over with. That changes, I believe, in the playoffs, where even if the first team scores a touchdown, the other team has a chance to score. That rule was obviously changed over the last few years when you saw what happened to the Buffalo Bills against the Kansas City Chiefs, and when you saw what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs just a game later with the Cincinnati Bengals, which essentially put the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl against the Rams. They changed it, but why? If you're going to change it, why only change it for the playoffs? I get it. I guess you don't want the games to last as long and the stakes aren't as high in the playoffs, but a game like Thursday night, you would want Baker Mayfield, who, again, he didn't have the numbers, obviously, that was comparable to Kirk Cousins, but he had a good game. I would want to see Baker Mayfield get a shot at possibly tying it up, especially after seeing the meme that they had of that man after Hodges scored the touchdown. So shouts out to the Falcons for beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 36-30. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.